The day has finally come. We're probably, hopefully, gonna make some progress on my V8 Touareg. If you're new to the channel, here's the brief recap. I bought this thing in June of 2023, which is 10 months ago. I bought it with some oil pressure issues, which at the time of buying, I kind of debated. I wasn't sure if it actually did have oil pressure issues. I thought it was something else. And I actually managed to get maybe like 500 miles out of it before, well, things went wrong. I did my best to fix the oil pressure issue without pulling the motor. Turns out it was as simple as a clogged pickup tube. However, the problem is that on these cars, in order to access the pickup tube, you obviously have to take off the oil pan. And I don't know how much you can see from this situation here, but the oil pan is blocked by this engine bracket here, as well as the subframe. And it is impossible to remove it without dropping both of those, which basically more or less requires you to pull the motor. Now that I've actually taken this out and gotten a good look at things, I think it is possible to access that without completely pulling out the engine, but you would have to remove the subframe and the engine bracket to do that. And well, it is what it is. I've got the motor out now. Not only that, but this engine is actually not original to this car. This motor came out of a parts car that I've already gotten rid of, that a subscriber sold me. And even though I don't really have hardcore evidence that this engine and transmission were good, I'm hoping for the best. Because based on what the previous owner, the subscriber who sold me this car, the parts car, the car ran and drove, and he parted it out and then sold the rest to me. So when I got it, I took out the motor, I took off some body parts, I rebuilt 2 more Touaregs with those body parts, and now I'm planning on putting this motor back in. And this car got on this lift in early December of 2023. And while I don't recommend to use Lucas oil additives to thicken the oil and set aside your oil pressure issues, I kind of anticipated the fact that I'm gonna be replacing this engine. I did not want to trust that engine after the unknown mileage with low oil pressure issues. So I just drove it till the motor sounded really, really bad. And once that started happening, I just put it on the lift in December, pulled out the motor, and thought I would be pretty quickly done. However, well, I wasn't. It is now April 19th. So
December, January, February, March, April.
5 months later, we're finally maybe going to be putting in the motor very soon. One of the main things that put this project aside for so long was that I broke things. And well, while I don't really blame myself for doing that, it was just kind of what had happened. I had no other choice. I had a seized bolt inside the frame. The bolt that holds, one of the 4 bolts that holds the subframe to the frame, was completely seized inside of this frame. And well, I had no choice but to break it off, meaning that this whole threaded section of the bolt was still stuck inside the frame, just like so. And there was no way of getting it out. I drilled it, I tried. I've used every possible methodology you could use to get a broken bolt out, and I was failing. First, I broke a bolt extractor inside of the bolt after I drilled a hole in it, so I had to get the bolt extractor out. Once that was out, I kept drilling it, and I had one of my friends drill it for me because I got sick of it and I wanted this thing done. So when he was drilling it, he broke off a drill bit inside of the bolt again, and basically at that point I gave up. So I had one of my friends chop the frame up. We had to make this window. I could have done it myself. It's not a complicated process, but I just simply could not bring myself to doing that. Because I genuinely really like this Touareg, even though it's got so many problems and they're known for being unreliable. I honestly think they're pretty good cars. This one specifically came with the airbag suspension, which once again is known for being unreliable, but man, is it nice when it works. And I think I've gotten myself desensitized to unreliable cars to the point that I'm willing to put up with all the issues that air suspension has just for the sake of comfort that it brings, as well as the convenience of being able to adjust your level of the car. Speaking of, if everything goes well today, which I will get into, potentially next weekend, so like literally 7 days from now, I might try and take this thing off-roading, which is still a very, very big if. But first of all, I've never off-roaded myself. I've gone as a passenger princess, but I've never off-roaded, driven off-road myself, and I would love to do it in this car. So if you're interested in seeing that, please subscribe, and hopefully next video, or maybe the video after that, depending on what I have going on here, I might have an off-roading video for you guys, which I would really, really like to do. So anyway, we had to cut out the thing that the bolt threads into. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore. The machine shop that I asked to help me out kept it, and I guess threw it away because they didn't think I'd need it, even though I did one for a little memoir. Regardless, what I had the machine shop do was make me this. And this is more or less what the stock cylinder inside the frame looks like that the bolt threads into. So this is one of the shorter bolts. This is not what actually would go into this, but it's of the same dimensions. And basically, yeah, this is just a big, very, very big threaded cylinder that should be able to go inside the frame. Here's what I mean. The original cylinder that was inside of this frame had to be cut out. We used a reciprocating saw to cut this out that had the stuck broken bolt inside of it. So now I'm probably gonna have to open up this window even more, which pains me to say that, in order to grind down the remains of that cylinder and be able to weld in this one. The original cylinder would go all the way from here up to there. And as you can see, because we were using a reciprocating saw, that is under a very big angle. And as you can see, our new cylinder is completely flat. So what we need to do is grind these guys down to the point that this cylinder fits in there and can be welded in place in an upright position so that we can insert this bolt into here and screw it in. Now, I absolutely hate doing modifications to the frames, car frames in general. I think that should never be touched, but please take my word for it. I had no other choice. I did everything possible to avoid that, and we simply just couldn't do that. What we're gonna do today, first of all, I'm going to grind that down. Secondly, pretty soon, probably like any minute now, I'm gonna have a friend come out and weld this in for me, as well as weld in my new flex pipes, because the original ones were pretty broken and messed up, and I ordered some new ones that we're gonna be installing instead of these. So hopefully once this is done, theoretically we should be ready to take this motor and put it inside the car. Without further ado, let's get into it and grind some frame.
Okay, that might need a second to cool down, but it's very well done. So what I did is I turned the wire speed down and turned the temperature off, so that it would melt more.
It's not like anybody's ever gonna see this.
It looks like
it's
a
inside a
candle
frame.
strip.
I just want to make sure to coat that so that it doesn't rust.
Oh yeah, internally, yeah.
So once it cools down, we're gonna do that, and yeah, we can bang that frame back into place and try and make it look OEM. OEM plus.
Tack here and here,
Yeah,
and that should help it. Maybe pull it up a little bit so it's straight there. Can I put a smiley face in?
Go for it.
No, I won't.
I'm perfectly okay with that. Okay, here's our finished product. Not finished yet, we are still going to paint this, but as far as metal work goes, that's what it's gonna look like. I don't think I'm going to grind it. I don't think I should. Probably safest to leave it this way, even though it doesn't look so good. However, the good news is that nobody's really gonna see this unless they pull the motor again. And in all honesty, if this car ends up needing another motor, chances are it's going to scrap, because I'm not doing it again, and I don't think anybody else is insane enough to do this on a car like that. Yeah, but honestly, since I haven't been getting to drive this thing around, I've gotten very, very fond of it, just in the sense that I've put in so much work that I've developed a relationship with this car, and now it's probably going to be with me forever unless something breaks as soon as I put the motor in and I end up giving up on it. I think this is gonna work. I mean, if not, we're gonna find out real fast, but I think this is gonna be perfectly okay. So what I'm gonna do now is button up the exhaust, because it is currently like that. And as soon as I'm done with that, believe it or not, we should be ready to get this thing back inside the car, which seems surreal. It's been so long. Okay, and I did that simply because I think it's the easiest way for me to slide this in. I wouldn't have to move it off the hoist onto something else. If you're new here, when I was pulling this out, I just set it down on dollies on top of jack stands, or jack stands on top of wheel dollies, which is incredibly sketchy. It worked, but it was scary. So we're gonna try and avoid that by using this engine hoist, and I'm gonna try and line this up to the best of my ability. And we're probably going to have to jack up separate corners of the subframe to start bolting them in, because this is too low. I mean, the car is not going to go down this low for the motor to bolt up to the frame. Theoretically, honestly, maybe if I take off the back wheels, I would be able to lower this low enough. I mean, it's going to give me very little clearance to work on anything with the car being so freaking low, but at least I won't have to mess around with jacking up different corners and trying to maneuver this engine to get close to the frame. So yeah, I think I'm gonna take off the back wheels and go from there. Well, first I gotta clean out all this crap that I have under the car. By the way, this thing here supports our stock plastic skid plate that was missing on this car. I didn't get to have that. However, speaking of skid plates, I mentioned that I will be probably off-roading next week. Well, if everything goes well with this project, which is highly questionable. And because we have no underbody protection, this might sound crazy, but I have an idea for a free skid plate. Well, almost free. I'll have to weld some things together. Now, I don't know if you guys can tell what this is, but I wonder if I can make a skid plate out of it. I've said too much. Let's move on to this. Now, what I don't know is where my wheel lock key is for this car. I mean, obviously I had it because I removed these wheels, but the Touaregs come with these. Maybe I put it back inside the car. I definitely hope so. Go real slow. Looking good so far. The drive shaft needs to be moved off to the side. Let's look for our wheel lock key. I don't think I would have put it in the trunk. That would be really dumb. I mean, maybe I put it in the trunk, because technically that is where it's supposed to go, and maybe Artem from the past knew that Artem from the future is gonna forget where he put this, so he would put it in the one place that makes sense to look. By the way, to anyone who didn't know how to open the trunk if you have no battery or no power to the car, right behind this taillight cover, there's this little white thing you can pull on that pulls the cable and unlatches the hatch. Please, please. It could also be in the glove box. I should check that. Aha! I do have it in here. Past Artem is awesome. By the way, speaking of more off-road modifications, you guys see these Toyota wheels with KO2s on them? Let's just say that they're not gonna go in a Toyota. KO2s that I got for $100 with the Toyota wheels, which I'm probably just gonna sell along with the Land Cruiser or something. I have no use for them. But they're 275 65 18s, and I definitely have 18-inch Touareg wheels. And this tire size will rub a tiny bit. So I'm definitely a little worried about this steering rod that goes into the steering rack, as well as our shift linkage. Those are primarily the only two things that really need to go in their specific spot, and we need to worry about as we're lowering this down. Looks like we're clearing everything over there. Okay, we're getting to the point where I can't really see much. I'm gonna throw a zip tie on that steering rod to try and make sure that it doesn't like fall off this way, and the car is too low for me to rearrange it then. So hopefully this will work. That should do it. Obviously it's not perfectly aligned, but it's better than it used to be. There we go. As you can hopefully see, now that the car is lower, the geometry kind of fixed itself, and now our axles are not getting caught in between the strut mount bracket. There it is. Nice. We're making sure that those connectors don't get squished anywhere. Those are important. They're for the transmission and the transfer case. Looks like those are already almost ready to plug into their home. And everything else seems to be looking more or less okay. We can even connect the tie rod now. How nice is that? Okay, so I managed to get the two rear subframe bolts in. That corner is actually pretty well in, hand tightened. And then the other side I think is still not tight enough all the way, but this thing keeps getting in my way, and at this point it's being held in by that bolt and the jack. So theoretically I could just slide that out. This is so well aligned right now. Oh my gosh. After this much messing around, this is very good to see. Just look at it. It's like sliding right in by hand. You have no idea how satisfying this is, because I've been messing with this for so long, and all that kept happening is that the bolts would get seized up and just not want to rotate. But okay, so now both of our rears are good enough in there. I'm not going to tighten them. That's actually going to happen after I lift the car up. So as long as I can get, you know, a solid like 5 rotations, 5 360s with my hands, that's good enough. We can tighten the rest later. So I'm gonna see if I can jack this thing up all the way. Yes. I was really hoping to retap that cylinder because the bolt threads in, but there's just a little too much resistance for my comfort. It's like halfway in, and it takes some effort to get it in there, and I just really don't want to risk messing this up and messing up our bolt and or the cylinder. I went to 3 stores and none of them had these. It's not the most common size, so we're gonna keep that somewhat unscrewed until I can find that tap, and we're gonna see if we lower the jack, is the subframe going to drop? And no, it does not drop, which is great, meaning that the other 3 bolts, actually 5 bolts, including the engine bracket bolt, are holding this up fine. Okay, so I'm going back to my original plan of using my old drive shaft that has a leak in the boot. However, I'm gonna do a very temporary fix up until I get the replacement part for this. And I'm just gonna do my very best to avoid grease spraying out all over my wheel well and all my suspension components. This definitely isn't a real repair. This is just a very temporary little something that I'm gonna do to try and slow down our complete failure of the CV boot. So I'm applying RTV or / gasket maker to the little hole, because it's quite literally just a tiny little hole that's causing our leak, to the best of my knowledge. And there's another spot right here that I also think got slightly damaged by the strut. So I'm gonna apply RTV to the top and try to work it inside that hole where the grease is coming out of. Again, don't judge me for this. This is a temporary solution to an axle that's going to go to trash soon enough once I get the new one and once I make sure that this car is run and drive. But I'm just gonna apply some electrical tape on top of the RTV to try and keep things sealed together. Just gonna go over here. Here. Go. And then we have this tiny little vacuum line. I'm gonna plug that in. Looks like that's good. if you didn't know, the battery Touareg is in a very fun spot, being the driver's seat, or under the driver's seat. I have a bunch of crap in the back seat. This is actually a sneak peek at what's coming. These are T2 Touareg taillights that are direct bolt-on to T1. I think it's time to start it. Believe it or not, I managed to not hit the record button when I first tried to start the car. But, well, here's what happened. So, after reading the codes, I noticed a code for a crank position sensor, which, yes, you guessed it, is in this box. In fact, there's two of them. Yes, they are from Amazon because I needed them fast, because if I do end up managing to go to the off-roading trip that I mentioned, that would be happening tonight. So I really need to get this fast, and I did buy two of them just in case we happen to have a defective one. What's interesting is that this was a pre-existing issue on the parts car engine. I have the log of codes from the previous owner of the parts car, so I guess I should have seen this coming, and I should have swapped this when I had the chance when the motor was out, but oh well, I did not. So here's our brand new Amazon crank position sensor, and we're going to install it. I already have the old one removed. Here it is. I had to cut the wire because I couldn't figure out a way to pull this out as a one unit. The good news is that it's not that hard to replace this. The connector is somewhere back here. We just gotta fish it out. It's definitely not the easiest thing. It is right here. I don't know if you guys can see that tiny little gray plug, but I promise it's in there. And it just tangled up behind this main wiring harness, which is why I haven't been able to like fish it out as much as I wish I could and show it to you, but it's right here. We're gonna plug this in, and we're just gonna drop the crank sensor down and then lift the car. There we go, this is plugged in. There's also a little bracket in here for it somewhere. I don't know if I'll actually manage to stick it into there because I can't really see where the bracket is. But honestly, I'm okay with it just dangling. Not really something I'm too concerned about. We just want to make sure that it's not going to be sitting on our downpipe, so I'm going to probably zip tie it off to the side a little bit somewhere. And the crank position sensor can be accessed through the back of the subframe here. It needs to go somewhere right by the end of the bell housing. And I'm gonna have to go by feel only because it's not really visible where the hole is. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay, I can feel it with my fingers, and now I just have to make sure that the hole for the sensor is lined up with the sensor, and then there's a hole for the bolt because it is held in by a bolt. Missing a bunch of the exhaust, so that's definitely something to do with how loud it is, but I don't know why it's driving itself up so much. But it is running. Let's see what the code reader says. Camshaft position sensor circuit and cylinder 7 and cylinder 2 misfire, as well as random multiple cylinder misfire. Cylinder 2 and 7 and cylinder 7 injector. Oh, I actually had not noticed this previously. Oh, and I also have coils that are not fully plugged in. Good to know. My God, yeah, I forgot to plug in the coils all the way. But that does not explain our camshaft code or the injector code. After clearing that, we do not have any check engine lights. Right now we have a traction control light, which is definitely due to the steering angle sensor that always needs to reset after you had the battery disconnected. And we also have our air suspension folds because the car is supposed to be in jack mode when we have it on the lift. I definitely am an idiot because I keep forgetting this. The amount of times I've looked up this diagram, I still forget what it is. But so this means that this is bank 1, this is bank 2. So that cylinder over there is the one that we have an injector fault on. And then this is also the bank on which we have our camshaft position issue. And here's our cylinder 7 injector. Ah, look, what do you know? The plug is loose. Oh yeah, I definitely worked on this in the past because I changed the valve cover gaskets. Okay, now I believe that is plugged in. Awesome. And now, what is up with the sensor? Okay, the connection is there, and I believe it is plugged in. So we must have a bad sensor. Yeah, that actually kind of does look like they were melting, which is kind of odd. This is the OEM sensor. Don't know what would have caused that, but we're just gonna swap it and see what happens. After clearing that, we do not have any check engine lights. Right now we have a traction control light, which is definitely due to the steering angle sensor that always needs to reset after you had the battery disconnected. And we also have our air suspension folds because the car is supposed to be in jack mode when we have it on the lift. So here we are, after 5 months of sitting still and only moving vertically on the lift. Please run and drive. Well, I don't know about drive yet, but what we have to do is let it warm up for a solid 20-30 minutes in order to get the transmission fluid to the operating temperature. Then I'm going to fill that. I'm not going to film it because I don't think there's any need to. And once it's filled, we're going to take it for a drive. And you're going to see in the next week's video if it's drivable. And if it is, I'm going to do everything I can to get it off-roading today or tomorrow. We have a 6-hour drive to the off-roading place, so I have no idea if it's going to make it. It's kind of up to date at this point. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, please like the video, and I'll see you next week.